everyone, it's Caroline, and today we wrap up our in-depth look at Canada by re-examining its present-day affairs and challenges, and looking to its future. We may leave you with more questions than answers as we examine the past convergence of cultures in Canada, ponder the nation's modern challenges, and consider what that means for its future. Our to-do list today is this. We will look at some previously learned information while also presenting some new facts. The end result is not so much answers as it is questions for you to consider regarding our northern neighbor. Our first question is this. What is Canada's national identity? As you already know, Canada became its own nation with the Constitution Act of 1867. Technically a monarch, but as of 2021, Queen Elizabeth II is the leader of Canada, but for practical purposes, it's the Prime Minister, chosen after citizens vote for a political party whose leader then takes that position. And that position, as of 2021 and serving a second term, is Justin Trudeau. So the question must be asked, is Canada run by the Queen, or the Prime Minister, or by its citizens who vote for the Prime Minister? Those citizens are just about as varied as Canada's physical geography. The majority of Canadians identify themselves as white and of European descent, but that is divided into two primary groups. About 40% of Canadians are of English ancestry, while about 27% hail from France. That's not all. Canada includes various minorities. About 22% of the population, including significant percentages of people from South Asia and China, as well as Black people, along with descendants of Indigenous inhabitants. Complicating the melting pot of culture is Canada's varied geography. See, in Canada, the citizens often seem to possess a regional or ethnic identity rather than national pride. The best example can be found in the province of Quebec, where many citizens advocate for independent sovereignty or self-rule apart from Canada's national government. The province even has a political party, the Bloc Québécois, with 32 members elected to the 338-seat Canadian House of Commons as of the 2019 election. Unlike the United States, which has no official language, Canada has two, English and French. And while 78% of the nation's population speaks English as a primary language, French is the official language in the province of Quebec, a legal structure very much designed to preserve the French culture present here. The conflict is based on a history of such division. From the time of their arrival, the first settlers of Quebec fought over the land and dominance of the fur trade. French colonists and their English counterparts wrestled for control of the area. Skirmishes occurred throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, capped by the Battle of Quebec in 1759. Though England won control of the land that became Canada, the residents of Quebec have tried unsuccessfully to secede, but have steadfastly maintained their culture over the years. Of course, the biggest casualties in the fight were neither the French nor the English. Rather, it was the first inhabitants of the region, the Native Americans, whose ancestors had migrated to the region centuries or even millennia before. Whether it was from gunshots in battle or diseases carried from Europe, interaction with the white colonizers proved deadly for most Indigenous people and their cultures. Their Canadian descendants, most of whom live in the Northern Territories, today struggle to hang on to their culture and don't necessarily identify themselves as Canadians. Okay, given the long-standing cultural differences between the citizens of Quebec and the rest of Canada, you probably understand why some animosity exists. And given the long history of Indigenous inhabitants and their catastrophic early relationship with those of European descendancy, that one is likely understandable as well. But there are other groups in Canada that also feel little loyalty to the nation. Like the United States, Canada is very much a nation of immigrants. And just like the US, that trend continues today, with controversy. More on that, but here is a statistic for you to consider. In 2016, just over 13% of U.S. residents were born outside of the nation's border. That same year, the percentage of Canadians born in another country was more than 20%. Now, back to the controversy. Canada, over the decades, has been accused of statutes and practices to stifle immigration there. We don't have time to discuss them all, But looking at immigration practices since Canada's nationhood in 1867, laws have been passed that seemingly limit entry to Canada for Black people, people from China and South Asians, which includes India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh today, and others seeking to live there. An even larger segment of the population may sometimes feel slighted as well. According to their website, Women Get On Board is a leading member-based community that connects, promotes, and empowers women to corporate boards in Canada. The group seeks to advance gender diversity in the boardrooms of the Canadian corporations. While these issues may seem familiar to Americans, they serve too as a reminder that the two nations do indeed have much in common, both the good and perhaps not so good. Today's Canadians have a new challenge regarding economics. After centuries of living off the land, hunting, fishing, whaling, trapping, fur trading, residents of Canada, regardless of heritage, are reaping benefits of a different kind. Much of the Canadian soil is overflowing with precious ores such as gold and silver, minerals such as diamonds and zinc, and resources such as coal and iron. Similarly, fossil fuels such as natural gas, coal, and petroleum are abundant in different regions of the nation. All bring money to the pockets of Canadians. But at what cost? Canada, a land known for its natural beauty, must weigh the profits from mining and fossil fuels with the effects it has on the earth and air. To be clear, the money is welcomed by all. Canada is an economic power, a developed nation that ranks 12th in the world in average annual wages as of 2020, with more than $53,000 per worker. Many environmentalists don't think it's worth the price of sometimes irreparable damage done to the earth and the atmosphere, and when the resources are gone from the earth, what then? There are other concerns as well. For example, above-ground pipelines to carry oil from the fields to refineries are less damaging to the earth and the permafrost, but present their own problems. Among other issues, they can block animal migration routes and inhibit the beauty of nature, encroaching on tourist dollars. Emissions from facilities harvesting oil from the soil and burning fossil fuels to produce electrical power is another concern. Though they've declined in economic importance, primary economic activities such as forestry and fishing are still moneymakers in Canada. But many of the best sites, such as the Grand Banks, have been overfished. Trees cut for lumber take time to grow back. The detrimental ecological impact must be weighed with the economic gains. Okay, let's get the facts straight. Canada has nearly 4 million square miles of land. Ladies and gents, that makes our northern neighbor the second largest nation in the world, trailing only Russia and just ahead of the United States and China. And while the US in 2020 had an estimated 328 million inhabitants, about 38 million people lived in Canada. But the country has a problem with overcrowding? Well, yes. Remember in an earlier lesson about population where we talked about the idea that not all land is habitable? Well, welcome to Canada. For economic, logistical, cultural, and practical reasons, and despite all that land, more than 3/4 of all Canadians live in an urban setting such as Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal. And those cities, like their American counterparts, have similar problems. A housing shortage is one. Pollution is another. A rising crime rate. Cost of living increases. Yep, Canadian cities have all of the problems that go with large metropolitan areas, just like America and every other country. And with an influx of immigrants from Asia and other places, the population continues to grow, meaning those issues will need answers. Does Canada have a US problem? Make no mistake, Canada and the United States are great neighbors, friends, allies, and trade partners. Heck, they share a border that spans more than 5,000 miles, the longest international border on the planet. But there's an old saying that if the US gets a cold, you'll hear Canada sneeze. What that means is that while the two nations have a terrific, long-standing relationship, Canada is in many ways seemingly dependent on the US. Keep this fact in mind, something you picked up in an earlier lesson. More than 3/4 of all Canadian exports head directly south to the United States. That's more than 75%. On the flip side, just about 20% of America's exports head to Canada. Think about that. 75% compared to 20%? Huge discrepancy. There's also somewhat of a worldwide perception that Canada stands greatly in the shadow of the United States, that the relationship is uneven and unbalanced. Whether that's justified or not, many cultural links exist: television and movies, radio, even professional sports leagues. And US culture at times pervades Canada's. Proud Canadians would argue that their nation is a member of the G7 Worldwide Political Forum. They'd say that Canada takes pride in being part of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. They'd tell you that Canadian workers have an average annual income that ranks 12th in the world. And they'd be right on all counts. But most Canadians can tell you at any given time the name of the American president. They can cite other numerous facts about the United States for that matter. On the other hand, ask most Americans to name the Canadian Prime Minister, and chances are they'll draw a blank. While that may seem somewhat unimportant to US citizens, perhaps it also reinforces the perception that Canada may indeed have a US problem. Of course, that so-called problem may not be an issue at all, as long as both nations continue to prosper as neighbors and allies and trade partners. Only time will tell, but the future of Canada seems largely tied to the fortunes of the US. That's all for now, but consider the questions presented here today, and you might also ask your parents if they can name the Canadian Prime Minister. And until next time, keep exploring.
Hey!